Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. Is it 27 or 29? What's our chapter number? 27? Okay. So we're reading today from 11th Canto, chapter 27, and we're doing only 34 verses. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayat Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. We can say the translation together. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and Srila Prabhupada, the translator and commentator. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering service unto the pure devotees, all that is troublesome, the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. So the title today of the chapter is the Lord Krishna's instructions on the process of deity worship. So just a little information on that is that Krishna consciousness, as you've heard many times, it's a science. So there's a certain procedure for things to happen, and if one applies themselves according to the formula, you could say, then guaranteed results are guaranteed. So even in the process of deity worship, there's a whole science behind it. And obviously in this chat, well, not hopefully it'll be obvious, Krishna is just giving an overview, not all the details, but he's giving an overview of the mood of the worshiper and some of the methods. So Om Agyanati Mirandasya Jananjana Salakaya Chaksu Unutam Jaina Tasmai Shugurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master very kindly forced open my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. So I am very much indebted to him and hope to stay in his service life after life. Hare Krishna. So if you're ready, we'll just go around the room and read the verses, the 34 verses that we have. And of course, every now and then I'll probably interrupt. And then we'll go from there, okay? So, there.
Shri Uddhava said, "My dear Lord, O Master of the devotees, please explain to me prescribed method of worshiping you in your deity form. What are the qualifications of those devotees who worship the deity? On what basis is such worship established? And what is the specific method of worship?"
So that just reminded me of a very important concept that's taught in Bhagavatam right from the very beginning, right from the first canto. When Parikshit Maharaj, when we get the story of Parikshit Maharaj and the setting of the Bhagavatam and everything, and how Parikshit inquires from Sukadeva Goswami, etc., etc. So in the very beginning, there's two types of qualifications that are established. The qualification of the speaker must be in the parampara, must know the science, must have heard from a previous teacher, and must be repeating what they've heard, not concocting. But as this verse indicates, that the participant also needs qualifications. So here it's talking specifically, what's the qualification of someone who's going to worship the deity? In other words, there must be a standard there. But okay, now, and then in relation to the Bhagavatam, what's the qualification of the listeners of the Bhagavatam? Well, oftentimes we we as listeners, we put the emphasis on the speaker. It's really important what the speaker says, but it's actually really important what the listener is, what the attitude of the listener is. If the listener is eager and submissive, which comes a little bit, doesn't always come right off the top, right off the street. People are necessarily submissive. But by repeated hearing, one gets an appreciation for the information that's being disseminated and a certain amount of respect for that information and those who are explaining that. So there's two qualifications. A speaker needs to be qualified in the sense that doesn't mean that the speaker needs to have a PhD in bhakti, but the speaker needs to be repeating what they've heard and, following basic principles and everything, living a pure lifestyle. And the listener also needs to step up to the plate, you could say. Yes, we're trying to spoon feed Krishna consciousness to people, but we need to do our part as listeners, be eager, be enthusiastic, inquire. And so this whole 11th canto, the inquiry of Uddhava, and Krishna speaking to Uddhava, etc., etc., it's like really packed with very detailed information. But Uddhava was very anxious to hear and get all of that information. And therefore, Krishna was more and more inclined to speak because he was a receptive listener. Okay, second verse. Please, and thank you.
All the great sages repeatedly declare that such worship brings the greatest benefit possible in human life. This is the opinion of Narada Muni, the great Vasudev, and my own spiritual master, Brihaspati.
So what's being explained by Uddhava there? A little bit of something that I touched upon when I was speaking. Yes, Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. Thank you. Yeah, that he's speaking, he said, yes, but it was just like what I heard from my spiritual master, who heard from his spiritual master, who heard. So it's in a chain, it's presented according to the individual's capacity and, personality, you could say. There's different ways people present things. Some are very studious and very intellectual. Some people joke a lot, etc., etc. There's different personalities. That's okay. But they're repeating what they've heard and they're not changing the message. Okay. Number 3 or 4, which number one?
O most magnanimous Lord, the instruction on this process of deity worship first emanated from your lotus mouth. Then they were spoken by the great Lord Brahma to his sons, headed by Bhrigu, and by Lord Shiva to his wife, Parvati. This process is accepted and appropriate for all the occupational and spiritual orders of society. Therefore, I consider worship of you in your deity form to be the most beneficial of all spiritual practices, even for women and Shudras.
Yeah, isn't that nice? so here's another point. Here's another point about the whole theme of the Bhagavatam. It fell out my brain, but I was going to tell you another point. The Bhagavatam was spoken by Brahma. Therefore I consider worship to you and your deity form to be the most beneficial. So again, what's the initial opening scenes of the Bhagavatam? Parikshit's asking from Sukadev Goswami. Remember his 2 important questions that he asked at the end of the first canto? This is a review for those of you who've been here through all 11 cantos. First the 2 important questions that he asked at the end of the first canto. I knew Vaninath would say it. Okay. Yeah. Microphone?
What have you determined, even after much study of various scriptures and all their divisions, etc., what is the most beneficial for human society?
Yeah. So he asked in essence, how do you live? How does one live in this world properly? And how does one die in this world properly? What's the most beneficial thing during living and at the time of death? Okay. So, interestingly enough, Sukadev Goswami begins his reply by talking about the first step in God realization. The first step in God realization for somebody who's just beginning the path is worship of the Supreme Lord in his Virat Rupa form, in his all-pervasive form. But the point is that he's taking us step by step by step to the highest form of realization, and explains ultimately about Krishna and his person, his activities and potencies, etc., etc. And now further, now in the 11th canto, this what's in this part obviously is worship of your personal form is the most important. And why is that? And that's like, in one sense, the essence of bhakti. Krishna is a person. And yeah, we can say that really easily. We can understand, yes, he's the supreme controller. Yeah, that's easy to say. But the realization of that, how he's directly and indirectly through his agents, directly and indirectly, having understanding what's in our life and bringing us to the highest good. And so in the process of Sukadeva Goswami's explaining the different stages of yoga realization up to the point of bhakti, he's giving the description of what it's like to perform Astanga yoga. What is it like to perform Jnana yoga? What are the qualifications necessary? And what are the qualifications that are necessary for bhakti yoga? Not that he's recommending those things to do, but he's presenting them so that we can compare the processes. Comparatively speaking, the process of bhakti yoga and this process of, which includes worshiping the deity, the personal form of the Lord, is the most easiest process and gives the highest benefit, gives the highest result, ultimately Goloka Vrindavan. So worshiping the deity it's so easy to become absorbed in worshiping Krishna as in his personal form, compared to meditating on nothing, on the void, on the impersonal form. That's so difficult, and it's so hard to be to control the mind to that point of who knows what, zero, but worshiping the deity and saying, oh, now let me think of how I can fix that light that's not in the right place. But that's devotional service. I saw some nice flowers. They were on sale in Publix the other day, 2 for buy one, get one free. Let me get some flowers for the deities. Things like that. It's easy to absorb our mind in that process. As we zoom along to the next text, whose turn is it? Thank you.
O Lotus-eyed One, O Supreme Lord of all lords of the universe, please explain to your devoted servant this means of liberation from the bondage of work.
So the mood there, Uddhava's mood is total humility. He's eager and he's humble. He's not, what do you mean worship the Lord in a form? I don't, no, he's got a humble mood. Can you please explain what are the qualifications? And so Krishna's going to pour open his heart any minute now.
The Supreme Personality of God has said, my dear Uddhava, there is no end to the innumerable Vedic prescriptions for executing deity worship. So I shall explain this topic to you briefly, one step at a time.
Thank you.
One should carefully worship me by selecting one of the 3 methods by which I receive sacrifice, Vedic, Tantric, or mixed.
So there's different processes, the Vedic process, the Tantric process, and the mixed. Why don't we I'm just going to read, or maybe can you just click into no, I'll do it, okay, because then you'll get off. Vaidika, this is the purport. Vaidika, or Vedic, refers to sacrifice performed with mantras from the 4 Vedas and auxiliary Vedic literature. Tantrika refers to such literature such as Pancharatra and the Gautamiya Tantra. And quote-unquote mixed indicates utilization of both literatures. It should be remembered that superficial imitation of elaborate Vedic sacrifices will not bring one to actual perfection of life. One must perform sacrifice according to the prescription of the Supreme Lord, who, as Srila Prabhupada never misses an opportunity to remind us what the sacrifice is for this age, who recommends for this age the chanting of the holy names. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Now please listen faithfully as I explain exactly how a person who has achieved twice-born status through the relevant Vedic prescriptions should worship me with devotion.
A twice-born person should worship me, his worshipable Lord, without duplicity, offering appropriate paraphernalia in loving devotion to my deity form, or to a form of me appearing upon the ground, in fire, in the sun, in water, or within the worshipper's own heart.
So there'll be further explanation of those different characteristics in a minute. Okay.
One should first purify his body by cleansing his teeth and bathing. Then one should perform a second cleansing by smearing the body with earth and chanting both Vedic and Tantric mantras.
Fixing the mind on me, one should worship me by his various prescribed duties, such as chanting the Gayatri Mantra at the 3 junctures of the day. Such performances are enjoyed by the Vedas and purify the worshipper of reactions to fruitive activities.
So thank you. So far what we've heard is that one of the very important aspects of deity worship is cleanliness. One should be personally clean, and one should have the area that the deities are worshipped should be also be clean. Continue, please.
The deity form of the Lord is said to appear in 8 varieties: stone, wood, metal, earth, paint, sand, the mind, or jewels.
So there's varieties. Go ahead.
The deity form of the Lord, who is the shelter of all living entities, can establish in 2 ways, temporarily and permanently. By permanent deity, having been called, can never be sent away, my dear Uddhava.
So thank you. So it explains there that in different programs and celebrations, sometimes in Vedic culture, they install a deity temporarily just for that particular performance. Usually it's made out of clay, sometimes sand, whatever. Even if I can even remember, even at the temple, sometimes during Govardhan Puja ceremony, they'll make a form of the Lord out of cow dung, out of gobar, cow dung. And he'll be worshipped, with flowers and incense and this and that for that day. And then later it'll be disposed of in a special way. But yes.
Also, in some Pradayas, they also do their just for a little bit more context on that. In some Sampradayas, even in their daily worship of the deity is installed daily.
Really?
Yes, and then uninstalled after the worship. I had the pleasure of speaking extensively about this when I was traveling with them. Anyway, someone was describing he had a chance to sit with them, etc. It was for devotees where our installation is permanent, and he was saying it was just very kind of unusual, because along with the paraphernalia, after they finish everything, they just put the deity back in a box along with all the other paraphernalia at the end of their worship. So.
Okay, thank you. Continue on.
The deity that is temporarily established can optionally be called forth and sent away. But
did we skip one? Are you on 13? We did 13? Sorry, I skipped it. Go ahead, you're fine.
No problem. I'll start over, I'm not sure where I was.
That's good.
The deity that is temporarily established can optionally be called forth and sent away. But these 2 rituals should always be performed when the deity is traced upon the ground. Bathing should be done with water, except if the deity is made of clay, paint, or wood, in which cases a thorough cleansing without water is enjoined.
Practical information there. Just like for Lord Jagannath deities, usually his body is made out of wood, and he's not except for his little snot yatra. His water isn't usually poured over him daily because sometimes that will split the wood pieces. Okay.
You can get done daily.
Okay.
I've seen
devotees use the mirror,
Oh,
and then they pour the water over the mirror,
yes, yes.
which is
Amazing, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, right. Okay, thanks. Good point. Continue.
One should worship me in my deity forms by offering the most excellent paraphernalia, but a devotee completely freed from material desire may worship me with whatever he is able to obtain, and may even worship me within his heart with mental paraphernalia.
Krishna. Can you think of some instances that you've already heard about this type of worship? Free from material desire, worship me with whatever he is able to obtain. Anybody come to mind? Dhruva, is that what you said? Oh, okay, and okay. Excuse me? Jagannath Das Babaji, can you tell me what that circumstance is? We should leave the mic with him. Thanks.
He was traveling with his deity, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had persons go with him, and it was described how it was just very completely unregulated. So in the middle of the night, he decided that the deity wanted to eat. He found a unripe eggplant and dipped it in some Ganga water and offered it to the Lord, and then took prasadam in an ecstatic mood.
Jai. That's, I was thinking of Sanatan Goswami. Yeah, Sanatan Goswami, who had been ordained by Lord Chaitanya to reestablish the lost place of pilgrimage in Vrindavan and to write books on bhakti. And then in due course of time, when the deity appeared before him, he would worship him. You know, all he had was some chapati flour. So he'd make chapati balls. He didn't even have a rolling pin so much. And he would just make hard little chapati balls and stick them to the edge of the fire and cook them like that without even any salt. And that's what he had. That's what he offered. And the Lord said, can you just get me a little salt? And he said, today you're asking for salt, tomorrow you're going to ask for sweets, and then the next day you're probably going to want pakoras. And so, well, how am I going to get all that paraphernalia? So let's think of the circumstance and what the very fact that he has such an exalted, purified, pure relationship with the Lord, that the Lord is directly speaking to him. It's not that he's imagining this conversation. The Lord is directly speaking to him. That means he's on a very high standard. And Srila Prabhupada would encourage us. He would encourage us, if you worship your deities nicely every day, then he will speak to you, but not necessarily in the very beginning stages. If we're hearing the Lord speak to us in the beginning stages, that's okay. That's very nice, but I would check with, respected elders or others just to make sure that everything's, on the up and up. And we're not encouraging pseudo fanatical imaginative conversations between one and the Lord. That will happen that can and will happen, but it's not the usual way that the Lord communicates to someone who's not very purified in consciousness or in activities. There's the standard procedure that comes out. Continuing.
In worshiping the temple deity, my dear Uddhava, bathing and decoration are the most pleasing offerings. For the deity traced on sacred ground, the process of tattva vinyasa is most dear. Oblations of sesame and barley soaked in ghee are the preferred offering to the sacrificial fire, whereas worship consisting of upasthana and arghya is preferred for the sun. One should worship me in the form of water by offering water itself. Actually, whatever is offered to me with faith by my devotee, even if only a little water, is most dear to me.
And just to point out, this process of the emphasis on worship, for those of us in Western culture or Western whatever, it's a little unusual, isn't it? All this emphasis on worship this, worship the sun, worship that, worship that. But it's actually to bring us to a point of thoughtfulness. That all of these, just, we take everything so for granted. We take the air we breathe for granted until it gets covered with smoke and it's difficult to breathe, or we take the water for granted until there's, a drought for 12 years and there's no water. Or, so many things we take for granted, but actually this whole process of bhakti is to bring us to be conscious. Prabhupada says first be conscious and then be Krishna conscious. Be conscious that everything's being supplied by the Lord. And therefore, it's natural. It's natural to feel grateful. Just like when you realize, and it does take a few years to realize how much your parents sacrificed to raise you and your siblings, It takes sometimes 40 years to realize that. We can simply say, thank you, Mom, thank you, Dad, this and that. And then, this and that. And then when you get to the point where you have children or, and you see how much energy it takes to maintain them, how much work has to go behind this and that so that they can just do what they need to do and deserve to do. And then, this is what my mother did all along. This is how the sacrifice of my father was so important. Or, unfortunately, in Kali Yuga, if we didn't have that, at least we can see that that's what was needed and appreciate in that sense the Supreme Father. We can go on.
Even very opulent presentations do not satisfy me if they are offered by non-devotees. But I am pleased by any insignificant offering made by my loving devotees. And I am certainly most pleased when nice presentations of fragrant oil, incense, flowers, and palatable foods are offered with love.
Thank you. So the best of everything offered to the best person. Hare Krishna. Continue. Should we going? Okay.
After cleansing himself and collecting all the paraphernalia, the worshipper should arrange his own seat with blades of kusha grass, whose tips point eastward. He should then sit facing either east or north, or else if the deity is fixed in one place, he should sit directly facing the deity.
So many little nuances of worship there.
The devotee should sanctify the various parts of his body by touching them and chanting mantras. He should do the same for my deity form, and then with his hands he should clean the deity with old flowers and the remnants of previous offerings. He should properly prepare the sacred pot and the vessel containing water for sprinkling.
Again, emphasizing the cleanliness of the area where one is worshiping and also one's personal cleanliness.
Then, with water of that prakshaniya vessel, he should sprinkle the area where the deity is being worshipped, the offerings that are going to be presented, and his own body. Next, he should decorate with various auspicious substances 3 vessels filled with water.
The worshipper should then purify those 3 vessels. He should sanctify the vessel holding water for washing the Lord's feet by chanting Hridayaya Namaha, the vessel containing water for Arghya by chanting Sirase Swaha, and the vessel containing water for washing the Lord's mouth by chanting Shikhaye Vasat. Also, the Gayatri Mantra should be chanted for all 3 vessels.
The worshipper should meditate upon my subtle form, which is situated within the worshipper's own body, now purified by air and fire as the source of all living entities. This form of the Lord is experienced by self-realized sages in the last part of the vibration of the sacred syllable Om.
The devotee conceives of the super soul, whose presence surcharges the devotee's body in the form corresponding to his realization. Thus the devotee worships the Lord to his full capacity and becomes fully absorbed in him. By touching the various limbs of the deity and chanting appropriate mantras, the devotee should invite the super soul to join the deity's form, and then the devotee should worship me.
The worshipper should first imagine my seat as decorated with the personified deities of religion, knowledge, renunciation, and opulence, and with my 9 spiritual energies. You should think of the Lord's sitting place as an 8-petaled lotus, effulgent on account of the saffron filaments within the whorl. Then, following the regulations of both the Vedas and the Tantras, he should offer me water by washing the feet, water for washing the mouth, arghya, and other items of worship. By this process, he achieves both material enjoyment and liberation.
It's a arghya. Arghya is a specific mixture of spices meant to, like as a mouthwash for the deity. Cinnamon, nutmeg, and something else like that. What was that? Cloves, yeah. Yeah.
One should worship in order the Lord's Sudarshan
chakra?
Sudarshan.
Yes, sorry.
His Panchajanya, Kancha, his club, sword, bow, arrows, and plow. His Mushala weapon.
That's his club.
Oh, okay. His Kastuba gem, his flower garland, and the Srivasta curl of hair on his chest.
Maybe it's not his club because his club is mentioned. Do you know what a Mushala is? Okay. Yeah, thanks.
One should worship the Lord's associates, Nanda and Sananda, Garuda, Rachanda and Chanda, Mahabala and Bala, and Kumura and Kumudikshana.
With offerings such as Prakshana, one should worship Durga, Vinayaka, Vyasa, Vishvakshena, the spiritual masters, and the various demigods. All these personalities should be in their proper places, facing the deity of the Lord.
The worshipper should bathe the deity every day as opulently as his assets permit, using water scented with sandalwood, ushira, root, camphor, kumkum, and aguru. You should also chant various Vedic hymns, such as the Anuvak, known as Swarnakarma, the Mahapurush Vidya, Purusha Sukta, and various songs of the Samaveda, such as the Rajna and Rohingya.
Information on the Mushala weapon. In describes this Mushala is made of wood. It is a cylindrical rod of hardwood. It is used as medicine and defensive weapon.
Our deity in Alatra, Balaram, he has a Mushala weapon. But it's not wooden. But anyway, it looks like a big spice grinder, spice smasher. No. Okay.
My devotee should then lovingly decorate me with clothing, a brahmana thread, various ornaments, marks of tilak and garlands, and he should anoint my body with fragrant oils, all in the prescribed manner.
The worshippers should faithfully present me with water for washing my feet and mouth, fragrant oils, flowers, and unbroken grains, along with incense, lamps, and other offerings.
Within his means, the devotee should arrange to offer me sugar, candy, sweet rice, tea,
shashkuli,
appa, mudaka, filled with sweet, steamed rice flour dumplings filled with sweet coconut and sugar, some yabas, wheat cakes made with ghee and milk and covered with sugar and spices, yogurt, vegetable soups, and other palatable foods.
Thanks. So that's the last of our verses to cover. Thank you for reminding me, Hare Krishna. I'm just going to read the purport right there. It's just one sentence. One can acquire detailed information of proper and improper foods to offer to the deity in deity worship by consulting Sri Hari Bhakti Vilas in a certain place. So as I was reading through these slokas this time, I was thinking of how Srila Prabhupada, another one of his unlimited glories, how he, coming from a culture that is totally accepting and understanding these principles of deity worship and Vedic literature and everything, comes to a whole part of the world where none of this is familiar. for the basic natives of the area. None of it is very familiar. And still he brings the essence of everything. He brings the essence of the Vedic teaching by telling us there is a Supreme Lord. He is a person. You have a relationship with him and you've just forgotten it. You're not your body. All the things, all those basic things. You're not your body. There's a way to connect with the Lord. Chant this mantra. And we're like, mantra? What's a mantra? Chant this mantra over and over again. And it will cleanse the heart and the mind of the dust accumulated, the identification. No, I'm American. I'm a lady. I'm a this, I'm a that. Cleanse the mind of those temporary designations. They're real, but they're temporary, and instill and infuse in one the consciousness that I'm eternal. I'm a spirit soul. I have a relationship with God, and there's a way for me to connect with him. And all of those things he brought, and he brought this very detailed process of deity worship, and he simplified it, but gave us the essence. We didn't lose anything by the simplification process. How Prabhupada simplified it. We didn't lose any of the essence of it. And we can participate even in a, not so advanced state of consciousness. We can participate in deity worship and get the benefit from that. And what to speak of participating in Krishna consciousness and get the benefit from that. No matter where our consciousness is at in what state it's at. That's an amazing empowerment by the Lord to empower Prabhupada to do that. So perhaps some of you are familiar with the beginning stages of deity worship in ISKCON, and perhaps some of you aren't. So I'll just tell you a few stories just so that you can relate to how we adjusted to deity worship and what our consciousness was like when deity worship was first introduced and where it should have been. It wasn't there. So the very famous story of how Lord Jagannath appeared in our movement by Malati Prabhu's graceful 10-finger discounted acquisition of these little forms of Lord Jagannath in a curiosity shop. She brought it to Srila Prabhupada. She said, these are from India. I don't remember. I'm just giving you a synopsis of the story. It's not an exact description of the story, okay? These are from India. They were in the store. Do you know what they? And Prabhupada said, and immediately when she showed him the Lord Jagannath that she got, Prabhupada immediately bowed down to the form of Lord Jagannath. Said, Lord Jagannath has come. So what's the amazing attitude of Srila Prabhupada, his amazing vision? He could see everything as the plan of the Lord. In fact, he was instructed way back by the Lord. You just go down and preach and I'll do everything. I'll take care of everything. I don't really want to leave the spirit. No, just go down and preach and I'll do everything. I'll arrange everything. So anyway, Lord Jagannath came in that very unusual way. Did Srila Prabhupada completely overlook the fact that, or maybe he didn't know right in the very beginning, that she stole the deity. She stole him. But he just saw, Lord Jagannath has come. And then however the other two forms in the Jagannath, Balaram and Subhadra were brought to Prabhupada. Prabhupada gave them to Shamasundar and told him, now carve a bigger form of these. And then he established, and then the deity installation, which is as you can get a hint, confirmed, you get a hint from these verses. It's a very elaborate procedure and everything, but the essence is that we're giving our heart to the Lord. So Srila Prabhupada established the deities of Jagannath way back in San Francisco with he had Shamasundar carve the deities, then they were painted, and then they were dressed, etc., etc. And then when they installed them, Prabhupada just had everybody offer a candle to them. Nobody knew what that meant, or nobody knew what the circular motion meant, but everybody offered a candle to and chanted Hare Krishna, and Prabhupada considered that was the installation ceremony, the very first installation ceremony. Amazing. And the devotees' attachment for the deities grew by their simple but innocent but bhakti-filled offerings to the Lord. Their attachment grew, their understanding grew, their consciousness was cleansed, and they made progress. And it was exponentially passed on. I remember, so I joined the temple in 1972 and in Boston. And the deities, Srila Prabhupada had established and installed the deities of Radha Gopi Vallabha there sometime before, obviously before I joined. But it was still a new phenomena, deity worship, and especially Radha Krishna. They were about that size. And so we used to take them off. So Prabhupada would emphasize cleanliness is really important. Okay? So we'd take the deities off the altar, put them on the back of the temple room in the bookcase, and we'd clean the altar. Then we'd take the deities back, bring them back, and stick them on the altar and think, oh, we did a great job. And Prabhupada was, he would encourage us, yes, keep doing things like that. He would encourage us. He didn't say, well, you didn't chant your mantras and sit down facing the deities on a kusha straw, and you didn't do this, and you didn't. No, he would just keep doing it. Just keep doing it. Just keep doing it. And gradually we got, then one time back in San Francisco, one time they decided to bring Lord Jagannath out with them on the Harinam. So they just brought one deity and put him there on the ground and they chanted. And then they came back and they said, we just did this, Prabhupada, is that okay? He said, well, he usually doesn't go out of the temple in that manner. So it's not the best thing to do. He didn't, chastise them, but he's encouraging their devotion. So don't think that it'll go in vain. Your little prayers to the deity that you make during the day or in the morning when you see them, or your little extra things that you think about them and things, thinking, how can I serve them nicely? And so it might be by cooking a nice offering. It might be by bringing them a flower that you saw. It might be by so many different ways. It might be by distributing books or whatever. But think of them. Offer your services to them and see how your life doesn't become fuller and fuller and more satisfied. We've degraded our consciousness to such a low level that it's hard to even relate to persons. Sometimes we think, depending on, sometimes we think, I'd rather just go live. All these people are really bugging me. They're really bugging me. This one does this, and that one does that, and that one's always asking me to do things that I don't want to do, and this one snores, and whatever. They're all really bugging me. I'd really like to just go away. But that going away or going by yourself or whatever is only satisfying to a certain amount, to a certain degree. But having relationships, that's really satisfying. Can be agitating at the same time, but that's what's really satisfying, and that's what we need to cultivate and develop. And so there are recommended procedures. So I could say a few more things, but how about if you have other comments or questions or impressions that you got from reading these verses, Mr. Govinda Prabhu?
I was wondering sometimes, because some deities are installed and they have all the elaborate sacrifice, and you hear that if they're installed then they're always there. Then I was wondering, well, some deities are not installed, and so what happens then? So somewhere or other, one day I ran into a Prabhupada quote. He was telling about how the deities are there to the regular worshiper. He was saying that they're there depending on the regular worship. If they're regularly worshipped, then they're there. But even if they're installed, if there's no regular worship, then you kind of feel that. Sometimes you go to the temples and Vrindavan, and even though they might be installed, you don't really feel that they're happy or like that. But so I'm just thinking, Gaur Nitai here, it's similar.
Nice. Yeah, it's totally true. By the regularity of the worship, then the deities they're present. And Srila Prabhupada would sometimes, again, back in the earlier days, when devotees would start it, even he would say that for temples. They would start a temple in some place and then they would want to close it because things weren't progressing very quickly or whatever. Prabhupada said, once you've come and opened a place, you can't close it again. continuing on in that line of thought, once the deity's been installed, it can never be uninstalled. It can never be neglected. And so as you become more familiar with different historical events that happened in Vrindavan, at different times Vrindavan would be attacked by Muslim invaders or something, and their tendency would be to smash deities because they don't appreciate the form of the Lord. And so when that would happen, sometimes they would hide the deities, and they would hide them where? In the bushes, in the mountains, in the forest, sometimes in the lakes. The deities would be submerged in lakes for years and years and years. And then some devotee would have the service of passing by that area, and Krishna would say, I'm in this lake. Come and get me out of this lake. Or in the story of Gopal, Madhavendra Puri, I've been hiding in this bush. I was put in this bush by the pujari years ago, and it's really hot in here, and I'm really tired and hungry and thirsty. So please take me out and worship me. And when he would, and he organized people to do that, and the deity was established, and everybody was totally ecstatic by that. And there's so many stories. What to speak of in just a few years ago, in outside of Mayapur, whatever section that where Lord Jagannath had been worshipped for many, many years, and then somehow or other the worship had stopped, and then that temple with the neglected deities came under ISKCON's banner, and the devotees started worshiping Lord Jagannath and giving him food a little bit before the final legalities of transferring the title, the legal title of the property from this person to ISKCON. They started worshiping the deities, and unbeknownst to Jayapataka Maharaj, they started offering prasadam. And so when after some time, Jayapataka Maharaj said, make sure you don't start the worship till all the legalities are in place, because once it's started, and there's 10 million red tape things in legally acquiring land in India. So they stopped. And the devotees had a vision, a dream of the Lord. They went there and they went to wake the deities up, and the deities weren't there. And the deities, Jagannath, Subhadra, and Balaram, were walking across the field going over to the Mayapur temple, saying, we're going over there because the prasadam is much better there. And these are stories. There's many, many stories of these incidences like these, of devotees having reciprocal relationships and with the Lord. And that's possible for all of us. Sorry, I'm kind of babbling, but I have 2 more minutes. I've been told that 8:35 is cutoff time. So there's 2. Go ahead, Prabhu.
Yeah, I just really appreciate Prabhupada's mood of just sharing the essence of bhakti and making it accessible.
Yeah.
Of course, the opposite of that would be the Smarta Brahmana approach, which is actually making a resurgence in ISKCON. And yeah, there are various groups in ISKCON, and a lot of this influence is coming from India, that are pushing for certain restrictions based on people's bodies, and really closing off that flow of mercy and that accessibility and that essence of bhakti that Prabhupada came to share. So I think it's very important to really study Prabhupada's life and his mood and try and imbibe it and carry it on.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
One last thing I could mention?
Yes.
Is one of the first, like even for someone, I have some experience, but not advanced, the first kind of like installation or of mercy from the deities is that you're able to remember them. And I have some experience like that. But it is interesting, I'll mention this one, Radha Madhava. I'm speaking of Kalakanta's deities.
Oh, okay.
They're visiting my house right now. So which is, but somehow, I was thinking, I made a joke to myself about them. Said, I'm not going to steal them. But that was a joke. I said, I'm not going to steal them. But But somehow they, even for myself, and I don't consider myself advanced as far as knowing anything about deity worship, but somehow I'm able to remember them from time to time. And it's not my, it's kind of just a mercy thing.
Yeah, yeah. And the deities are very merciful like that. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, they are. And another sign of getting the deity's mercy is that you get service. That's another sign of the deity's mercy, that there's some service available. Did you have your hand? Yes, okay. And now we really are ending.
So, thank you so much. In terms of worship, there's one word that I also heard equivalent to worship. The word of attending to the deities, and to all the needs that deity might have. At one time, Rukmini, Prabhupada's disciple Rukmini, who was just here recently, she said to Prabhupada, how can I develop this like feeling towards the deity? Because, it's a stone or metal, or how can I develop a feeling? Prabhupada said two things in regards to deity worship: punctuality and cleanliness. If you attend to the deities in those kind of ways, in those areas, the bhava, the feeling will come, because deities will reciprocate.
Jai.
Be on time, be clean.
Be on time and be clean. And on that note, we're being on time to end. Hare Krishna. Thank you very kindly. Have a wonderful day. Vanchakalpa trubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. And another little thing now that class has ended. One time a devotee approached Burijan Prabhu, and I just thought of this, but I'm okay. Approached Burijan Prabhu and came from a Muslim background where they're not used to worshiping form, the deity, So, and she said, I am really having a hard time understanding that the deity is, and so it was in Vrindavan. He said, just go in front of the deities and stay there until you feel something. And she went and she went and she stayed there and she stayed there in front of Krishna and Balaram, in front of Krishna and Balaram. And gradually, by that prayerful mood, she could feel some sort of reciprocation and lightening of her heart and consciousness. So, bottom line is, don't forget to offer your prayers, your thoughts, your troubles, your desires to the deity and beg for their guidance. And they will guide you. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.